I'm going to blame that on my sniffles to this speech. But bear with me. And for those of you who were at my mum's birthday, you'll know my track record with emotional speeches and making it through is not great. But again, your patience will be appreciated. By way of introduction, my name is Ajay, for those of you who don't know me. And I would estimate that I would be somewhere between the 9th and the 14th of Grandpa's favourite grandchildren, which makes me better than at least 2 of them. And it's a privilege of mine to share a few words today in his memory. I want to start by confessing that I don't believe I ever got to know who Grandpa was. And I mean who he truly was, what the things he would think about were, how he thought about them, what made him tick, and what experiences and milestones shaped him to be the man that he was. I mean, he was a boy born in 1923, who lived through the whole of the Great Depression, the whole of World War II, and by the time India was granted its independence from Britain, he was a 24-year-old man, married and had a 1-year-old child. I doubt anyone could have lived through such hallmarks of history without some remarkable stories, the majority of which I suspect we'll never know and we'll never hear. I don't know about the rest of the cousins, but I do truly regret the fact that my Malayalam was too poor to get to know him with any more depth than I was able. Despite which, it was genuinely and truly a blessing to have him around for as long as I can remember growing up. My impressions of Grandpa was that he was an ox of a man. He was remarkably strong and remarkably stubborn. We'll get to his strength in a moment, but for everyone in the family, I know you guys will remember that he would always insist on having 4 teaspoons, sometimes tablespoons of sugar in his tea. And then he would be absolutely incredulous in the future when, at the suggestion that may have had something to do with the fact that he eventually was diagnosed with diabetes. And then even then, when he wasn't allowed the sugar, he would then get the kids to try and sneak him some biscuits to supplement the sugar that he couldn't have. From the stories I've heard from Grandpa himself, from his kids, and those who remembered him, I know he was a strong and fairly intimidating man in his younger years, and he was definitely a bit rough around the edges. But right alongside that, he placed an incredible value on the preservation and protection of his family, which is something that became increasingly and exponentially apparent as he grew older. And I believe it's a quality that he desperately desired to instill in his family, which I hope we can be a testament to as the years go on. Grandpa was a proud man, and I'm certain that he took the greatest pride in his family. For someone who was often described as somewhat impersonal, standoffish, and at times intimidating as a younger man and as a father, as he aged, I think he really wore his heart on his sleeve, and he showed how important his family was to him. Not knowing as much about Grandpa as I would have liked, I thought I would ask the person who arguably knew him the best, and I had a chat to Grandma about how she would describe him. She tells me this story about how Grandpa was the second oldest boy of 11 kids, and at the age of 12, he left school at the instruction of his father and assumed the role of the primary caretaker of the family along with his mother, soon after the tragic death of his older brother. Grandma and Grandpa were married in 1943. Grandpa was 20, Grandma was 17, and they began their family life together. As was already mentioned, Grandpa worked exceptionally hard for years and years to provide for his family, and was also well known for helping the poor in the local area, and he was well loved by the local community. By all accounts, it seemed he grew to be a pretty tough character, a real man's man, a really hands-on guy, but never at the exclusion of compassion for those less fortunate. I asked Grandma about the things that she remembered about Grandpa, particularly early in their marriage. She sheepishly asked me not to include the contents of that conversation in the speech, though I couldn't resist adding a couple of cheeky anecdotes that I found amusing. Sorry, Grandma, when this is eventually translated for you. Apparently, Grandpa had a thing for wearing ironed shirts. So if his shirt was crumpled, he would take great issue with it, much to the ire, I think, of the kids. But it showed that, he may have worked the land, he may have been a farmer, he may have been really hands-on, but it didn't mean that he didn't have to have style. Apparently for the first 2 years after they got married, out of what I can only imagine to be the shy awkwardness that can often come with a traditional arranged marriage, they would barely look at each other when they were in the same room together. Obviously they sorted that out by virtue of the number of family that we have today. Grandpa Grandpa took the same stance as his father had with him, apparently, in saying to my dad and his younger brother that they shouldn't bother going to school. You guys can cap it off there, that's about enough. Primary school's enough. Basically citing that it worked for me, I turned out okay. I, for one, want to know why our parents didn't give us that option. But we'll take that up yet another time. One of the sweeter things that Grandma said to Grandpa was that, particularly since they moved to Australia, he would be the one person she could rely on to listen to her tirelessly. No matter what she would say or how long she took in saying it, even if it meant that he needed to rest his eyelids in between. And I can confidently say that I've been in that position, except it's usually followed by a few snores as well. What I wanted to know from Grandma was her reflections on Grandpa as a man, as a husband and a father. She said to me that they had plenty of ups and downs over the 71 years of their marriage, including a few particularly serious experiences and struggles. But throughout it all, she never felt that he waned in his faithfulness to her, and she grew in confidence in the knowledge that he ultimately always sought hers and the family's best interests. She said that one of the sweetest and most touching things that she loved about him was how he would always end and sign off his prayers by thanking God for the whole family, but would always begin by giving thanks for her, by referring to her as his, pardon my pronunciation, but Kurtuna Tanna Magala. So, or roughly translated, the daughter you gave me to be my companion. I'm going to finish up with the question that I asked Grandma late last night before I finished writing this. When I asked her how she would like her husband and her grandfather to be remembered. And she said this: she wants him to be remembered as a caring and loving man who prioritized the value and protection of his family, and as a man who went out of his way to help those who were in need. To be remembered as a man who grew more and more loving and caring as he grew older, as he came to believe wholeheartedly, personally, and passionately in Jesus Christ, and wanted the same for his family. I didn't get to know Grandpa as personally and deeply as I wish I had, but I have no doubt that I'm a better man for having known him and had him in my life, as I'm sure he's done for each of us. His modelling of faithfulness in his marriage, the value he placed on family, and his passion for God are immutable and timeless qualities that I hope he can continue and be part of each of our lives. Let's remember to praise and thank God as we remember him as he was, and may he rest in peace until the Lord returns.